All right, cool. So we'll get started here. So today I'm doing a little call-in show here. So we're here at the Christ-centered Discord server, and the topic today is abortion. And basically, I'm going to invite people on up here, and I'd like to talk to them about what they think about abortion, how they arrived at what they believe about abortion, why this topic is important to them, why they were compelled to come up on stage and talk to me about it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Uh, I'm here in a Christian server, and I'm not Christian. I just want to put out a full disclosure there. I am an agnostic atheist, so hopefully that's okay. I'm sure you guys are more than welcome. I'm pretty sure Danielle already knew that, and I want to thank her again just for allowing me to have this event here. That was very nice of her to allow me to do that, along with the other mods and admins. And yeah, so I've been on both sides of the abortion of stances. I've been pro-life. I've been pro-choice. Honestly, I don't even know where to be at this point. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm kind of at crossroads between. I feel like there's needs to be fulfilled on both sides for me, on the pro-life side and the pro-choice side. So I'm kind of in a point where I don't really know. That's just kind of me. I just want to put that full disclosure out here. Also, I'm not here to really change your minds. I'm just strictly here to have a conversation, especially since I'm not really decided myself. Why would I want to persuade you one way or the other? But without further ado, we can get started here. There was one person who I was kind of chatting with before we started here, and I promised him, I think it's him, I would, you could be the first guest. So if you do want to come up, I'm going to invite you on up. Hello there.
Hello, how are you getting on?
What's good today?
Good, brother. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Could not be better.
So,
Well, I'm a little tired, but aside from that, I'm just doing fantastic.
really good. So the topic is abortion then, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What's your stance on abortion?
My stance is I can see I have I have a need for protection, right? I would want to have
Mm-hmm.
protection for human life, but at the same
Okay.
time, I think I would have a
Like
need
you're just
for
like
everybody to. Oh, I'm
yeah,
glad
the
you
camera.
enabled your video, but I'm just gonna change a setting real quick here just to make this work better because it switched some stuff on me. That's okay. All right, we are good to proceed. Um, so yeah, I would like everybody to have freedom to choose what they would want to do, but at the same time, I have a need to protect human life. I'm kind of a stalemate, I guess you could say. What about you? How do you feel about abortion?
Ultimately, because the Bible says murder is wrong. Of course, my stance on that is it's wrong. But then you would also argue from like the other perspective that it's not even a life to begin with. Then I would argue anything that is conceived and when the egg in the woman's womb is becoming fertilized by the sperm, that 100 times out of 100, you're going to get a human life out of that. It's never going to be a crocodile. It's never going to be a dog. It's always going to be 100 times out of 100 a human life. So I would argue it is murder in that sense because the second that egg becomes fertilized, I would deem that as a life because there is life in the making, regardless on if it's a week old, 2 weeks old, 4 weeks old. It doesn't matter because 100 times out of 100, that's going to become a baby, a human baby. That's what I would say on it. Obviously,
Gotcha.
people would disagree. That's my perspective. It's my take.
I'm going to repeat back what I think I'm hearing just to make sure I understand you 100% correct. And what I heard was as soon as the sperm meets the egg, that will create a new life form, which is like one cell, I guess. And that one cell is a human life, and is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly
And
what I'm
what?
saying. Yeah.
Gotcha. Why is this topic of abortion important to you?
Well, mainly because the Bible tells us not to murder, and I also knew a lady who had went through that type of scenario where before she actually gave her life to Christ, she actually was in the process of having an abortion because of, societal pressure that because she was 17, 18 at the time, she was told that she couldn't have a baby and that the best option was to then, abort the child. So because she actually went through with that before she gave her life to Christ, she ended up having very like traumatic experiences through that because she would then have lamps of blood cells flying out of her, like abdominal pains, like excruciating abdominal pains, blood, like how when they would like take the pill, it basically just like cramps up the baby from the inside and just like tears it apart.
Mm.
And that body parts are then released out through the woman's vagina, which is what happened to her. So I can relate to this a bit, obviously not in the sense of like she had, but I can understand where she was coming from because she explained it to me in like in depth detail and how messed up it is. But yeah, that's why I would say ultimately I disagree with abortion because it's just innately wrong because that life, from a Christian's perspective, God has given that child life, and we all have innate values in ourselves from God, and that's just my stance on it at the end of the day. So that's all I would
Okay.
say on it.
I think I understand. If hypothetically there wasn't a God and somehow our universe ended up coming to be without any assistance from a God, would you feel differently about abortion if you believed that was the case?
If there was no God and there was no deity that defines what's right and what's wrong, then that would be a whole different subject because then we'd have to also argue morality at that stage, which then would entail if there is no God, everything's relative because then I can say I think murder is okay. Thus, I think abortion is okay. This hypothetical scenario. You could then claim I think it's not okay. You could say I think abortion is wrong, and I think murder is wrong. I could say it's right. For you then to go and condemn me for me saying like in this hypothetical scenario that abortion is right, then you were presupposing objectivity onto me, which who are you to be presupposing objectivity when you yourself are a mere human who is fallible, who can be wrong. You see what I'm saying? So then from that, I would just argue because God tells us what is right and what is wrong, and because God, to be God, you need to be all knowing. So ultimately, He would know what's best. You see what I'm saying? I would
Hmm.
say abortion is wrong because it's murder, and God tells us murder is wrong. So
Okay.
what I would say.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, and maybe I am, maybe I'm not, you can tell me if I am. If in this hypothetical world where there is no God, would you still think murder was wrong, or would you think it was okay?
Well, I'm just going to go back to the mindset I had when I was, in fact, atheist.
Mhm.
At one stage, I was atheist slash agnostic, kind of similar to what you are now. I would then say, hey, what about in the unique scenario that like a woman gets raped or something like traumatic happens along that line? Why then does that entail that she has to keep the baby because that's a trauma baby, which is what they would call it?
Mhm.
That time I would agree because there's no objectivity and everything's relative. You can do as you like because ultimately we're going to die one day and we're going to go into the fertilizer pit and nothing's going to matter anyway. we could literally just say the purpose of life is to make money and, you know, have sex with as many women as we like, basically satisfy ourselves, like whatever makes us happy, if there is no God. So then I would say I don't care if there was no God, because God has given me guidelines on morality, and He has opened my eyes and shown me what is right and what is wrong. I don't understand why it's wrong, because God is ultimately all knowing. So then that's what I was arguing.
I think I'm understanding what you're saying, and you can tell me once again if I'm misunderstanding, because that's possible. With regards to right and wrong, and that would obviously include abortion as well. It's important to you because this God has indicated either it's right or wrong, and then there's also an afterlife involved. I think you said that otherwise it's for nothing. I think you were saying that there's some sort of afterlife involved. You can correct me if that's not what you were saying. So is it a lot
that
about
would
that?
be yeah, you're correct.
I'm correct. Okay, fantastic. So you kind of mentioned two issues. Two things. I don't know if they were connected or not. With regards, you said like God is all knowing, so he'd be able to say, for sure, right, wrong, and there wouldn't be subjectivity involved. And then you kind of mentioned, the afterlife without saying the word. Are those two separate things, or are they correlated? Are they the same concept?
So let me just make sure I'm understanding your question. You're asking me, does the afterlife correlate to God being like all knowing? Or did I get that wrong?
Not quite. Let me try to rephrase. I might have had a really asked that in a confusing way. Let me ask a slightly different question. With God being the ultimate authority, which I think is what you were saying,
Yep.
is that more important to how you came to your thoughts on abortion, or is like the afterlife more important to how you came to your thoughts on abortion?
Well, once again, wait, can I get your name just so I can address you properly?
Pierce.
Pierce, okay, you can call me Akon. So,
Okay.
Pierce, the reason why I got to this line of reason is because of the experiences I've went through personally, and I know that's not a sufficing enough answer for some people, but then hopefully people who don't decide with me on this can listen to where I'm going with this. Because of experiences I've had personally, i.e., listening to this chick I was talking to, how she went through it herself, how then she actually had her own experience with God, how God showed her this consensus of morality on how it's wrong to abort these kids. Then, when actually looking into the abortion itself, and how the pill, as I've already stated, rips the child apart from within, and like they say it's like a normal period, but in reality, it's like extra pain and extra blood clots flying out the woman's, private part.
Mm-hmm.
That then is just, it literally makes it look like a crime scene. Like I think it's ultimately wrong in that regard. Even if I had that knowledge when I was an atheist, the one knowledge I have now, disregarding, let's say in this hypothetical scenario, I didn't believe in God,
Mm-hmm.
but I still had the knowledge that I have right now about abortion, about what I've been told. I would say it's ultimately wrong, because the fact that that pill would do something to you like that, and then the aftermath of what that pill does to you is excruciating. I've also seen like videos of how it actually goes down. So this woman was in her bathroom and she took the pill, and obviously then like she had the process going. It was kind of smooth at first. It was like a little bit of blood, like how you would have on your period as a woman. And then one thing led to another. She started having like big clamps of like red, like cells flying out of her body. She was in excruciating pain, like to the point that she was like saying that she just wanted to die because how painful and horrible the experience was. And I'm pretty sure she's speaking from her own personal experience also, but
Mm-hmm.
she is acting in this scene because it was a video I saw. But ultimately, with all that in mind, even if I wasn't a Christian or even if I was atheist or agnostic, I would still say, with that knowledge, it's ultimately wrong because of all those things that happen after you take that pill, the abortion pill.
I'm gonna throw out another hypothetical scenario. So in this hypothetical scenario, let's still say you're agnostic or an atheist. And in
Okay.
this scenario, they take the pill, but instead of gruesome outcome, instead of a gruesome outcome, it's just like a snap of the finger, and the fetus is just gone, vanishes. No,
Hmm.
no blood, anything like that. Does that
Okay.
change how you feel about it?
The situation on if you were to take the abortion and the baby from within just poofed out of existence,
Mhm.
I retaining the knowledge I still have now, I would still be unsure.
Okay.
Then, from an atheist perspective, I can see why they would say pro-choice because in the scenario of somebody going and getting raped, they're like, "Oh, it's a trauma baby. They shouldn't have that kid. It should be their choice." Then I can actually see some leverage. I'm not just going to be like biased because I am Christian, but I'm also going to look at it from their perspective. I can see why they would want to get rid of it.
Mhm.
But if it was only that simple, then I would say that is somewhat justified if there was no God defining right and wrong. Because I believe there is, and he's already defined that for me, I ultimately disagree with it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand your perspective here.
Oh,
It sounds like you have you have this need to preserve human life. Does that sound about right?
Yes, because I have the values that I go by currently, I believe there is a need to preserve that human life. And I could go on a whole tangent about that, but I'll try to keep it short. Because God has planned like generations of families to actually be produced to glorify his kingdom. And through the acts of abortion, those kingdoms won't have those people that he planned to have in them. That doesn't mean like any form of predestination or anything, but rather that he knows that his creation that he planned to have done, because we're all made in the image of God, it won't happen because of acts of abortion. So then that completely cuts off a bloodline of families that will no longer exist. It's like you have this right here, this is the timeline. I'm not going down like have the child and then they get married, they have another family, it keeps going, and then it cuts off right here and they can't go past anymore because of the
Mhm.
abortion. That timeline will no
Mhm.
longer exist for that specific family. So that's where I'm going with that, Pierce.
Why is that? Why is the timeline of the family? Why is that important?
you can do anything you want.
Because God has planned for these families to exist and he has means for everybody to
Okay.
actually build
So
himself up and to glorify his kingdom. And that won't happen with abortion.
okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's like people are kind of messing with the plan and kind of intervening and making it not work out right.
No,
Exactly.
Okay.
have to waste the money.
All right, I think I have one last question for you. So you said that we kind of agreed that you wanted to preserve human life, and I think your main reason that you stated was to glorify God. I'm wondering if also, besides glorifying God, if that comes from somewhere within you.
Well, once again, Pierce, as I've stated, if I didn't believe in God, I would still disagree with it because of the knowledge I do have. Now, if it was as
Yeah.
simple as just poof and the baby is gone, I would ultimately be like, okay, I would say be more acceptable towards it. Obviously, with having the rules set in place. I don't believe in God, and also it just disappears, and there's no like bloody mass murder going on within the stomach. Then I would say, yeah, I'd be more accepting of it. But because those qualities do exist, and well, objectively one of them exists, the pill does actually do that. You can like look at this research yourself, or maybe I can send some sources if you like. But with like the thing of God, we can't actually fully prove he exists, but we do have evidence that he exists. And in my opinion, he does in fact exist. He tells me it's wrong, so it's wrong. The Bible is my ultimate source of authority. When it comes to the pill, though, that's objectively wrong because it makes a mass genocide in your own stomach. Like it's just a murder scene. It's horrible. Like if I could even probably find you the video and maybe present that, but I don't know. It's kind of gruesome if I can show it on the server.
Yeah, let's
But,
not do that.
Yeah.
So in this, I know I said last question, but maybe this will be the last question. So in the non-hypothetical world, well, this will be kind of hypothetical. Let's say you're an agnostic or atheist, whichever you prefer, and these gruesome details still exist. Haven't changed that part of our world. Where does that need to preserve human life come from at that point? Is that still your main concern? Your main thing that's driving your stance on abortion?
So when it comes down to it, if you were to repeatedly, if I take a knife, go into a kitchen, I repeatedly stab an individual, it's going to look like a crime scene. It's going to be disgusting. There's going to be blood everywhere. It's going to be, the person will be dead, of course. Likewise, when the pill is actually in the woman's womb, it's ripping this fetus apart, and then that's being disputed out the woman's private parts, and it's going wherever she is placed, like whether it be on the floor, in the toilet, whatever. It's just ultimately, the comparison is too similar for me to say that this can be a normal thing. You see what I'm saying? Like, you see where I'm going with this?
I see what you're saying.
It's just
what I really meant to get after with my question is, given all these details of what you're describing, why is it important to avoid that?
because ultimately, if there is no God, everything's meaningless and it doesn't matter. You can go kill if you want if there is no God. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to decompose in the ground. We're going to be eaten by the worms. So ultimately, there won't be any right or wrong. Everything will just be relative. And you can do whatever pleases yourself. Because I believe there is a God, I believe the latter.
If there was no God, would you want to do awful things like that?
Me personally, I do have these. I'm sure everybody has some like intrusive thoughts. There would probably be some things I would be doing right now if I didn't have the morality God had set in place for me to follow by, and ultimately I wouldn't be in a very good place. So, yes, I deny myself. I deny my flesh for the glory of Jesus Christ, and I follow what He shows me, what is righteous. And ultimately, if I'm quite honest, before I did give my life to Christ, and before I was actually doing these things with satisfying my flesh and doing these things that I decided just to do because it made me feel good, down the timeline, I was just feeling worse and worse, and honestly, I was getting like in a state of, people call it depression. I don't like to use that word because I feel like it's thrown around, but that's what it felt like. But ever since I started following these, like the Bible, which is, it's ultimately just a guide for life. Like that's what the Bible is. It's literally a guide for your life. I feel much better, and I actually see myself going somewhere, and I actually have a purpose, and my life is just increasing day by day. The power of the Holy Spirit guiding me. So, yeah, man, I'd say you just have to experience it for yourself to understand where I'm coming from.
I think I've asked all the questions that I'd like to ask at this moment. Do you have anything for me? Any questions for me?
Well, when I first came in here, you stated you're half and half. So I'm just going to assume, correct me if I'm wrong, would the half of you that thinks it's right be because of like maybe some trauma experiences someone could endure, like rape, for example, that then they have the right to get rid of that baby? Is that where you'd be coming from?
I think that would be something where I would make an exception for sure. Like no doubt in my mind in that situation. However, that's not exactly where I'm coming from. It would be more like there's two competing things that I desire, right? One would be to preserve human life, and that's competing with the freedom to do as you desire with your body. So those two things are kind of within me, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. All right, that's understandable, considering your perspective. Like, you believe that there is possibly a God, but you said you're agnostic atheist, meaning that you're more set that there isn't a God, but you're unsure that there could possibly be a God, correct?
Yeah, unsure, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so then I would like be like, okay, fair enough. Why you have the opinion that you just obviously I fundamentally disagree, but I respect your opinion and hope you look into the evidence for yourself and come out to the conclusion. Like, if you just study the evidence, you'll see how reliable Jesus Christ actually is. And by the power of the Holy Spirit, maybe you'll come to him one day, but that's ultimately down to yourself because you have that free will to do so.
All right, I appreciate chatting with you, and I will bring up the next guest. So thanks for
bro.
coming up.
God bless. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, I believe Eric is next. Hey, Eric, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. You?
Doing good. Just gonna
All right.
adjust my settings real quick here.
All right. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you really good, actually. Very clear.
Oh, nice. All right. So, pretty much, my stance on abortion is, well, first off, I'm gonna say this. I see both sides. I can understand why, like, somebody would want to get an abortion, especially when it comes to, like, rape. Right now, it's like I'm trying to one. Right now, it's like I can understand it. I still don't support it, but I do understand it. But on the other hand, it's like, I also would prefer, like, someone not to get an abortion, because ultimately speaking, it's like, you're taking someone's life. And I would say before I became a Christian personally, I kind of always somewhat thought that to an extent. It's just like, I just didn't necessarily have a real opinion on it. I used to say like, to people, hey, like, if, the person because if the person gets an abortion, then they'll just, live to regret it. And I can understand now that that was a bit rude of me to say. I will admit that. I don't really say it as much. I don't really say it at all anymore, actually. But yeah, it's like, now, since I became a Christian, it's like I've been more, confident in saying, like, I don't support abortion, just because, well, the very fact that it does take away the opportunity for someone to, like, live a great life. And I believe that, like, even unborn, like, children should have the opportunity to be born. And for the most part, I would say, like, you could have done two things to avoid that. For one, from a biblical perspective, you could have easily just, like, waited until marriage. But I know that's not. I know that's ideal especially in this society right now. So that's not really going to happen. A lot of people are going to have sex. And the second thing is, like, you could have just wore a condom, and, like, because ultimately speaking, I would say, like, most people who aren't ready to, like, have a kid, like, end up, like, getting pregnant. And I think it's just, I don't want to say selfish of them to, like, just, do that, then abort the kid. I don't want to say selfish, but to an extent, I do think that. And because, well, it's like you did all that, and then, like, you're avoiding like, the consequences by, like, just doing that, just getting rid of the baby like that. And I think that's wrong. And my stance heightened when I became Christian. I'd say that.
Gotcha. I'm going to repeat back kind of what I'm hearing, and I think what I'm understanding here. So I think the important thing that you said, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the opportunity to be born. It sounds like that might be really the underlying reason. It sounds like that is kind of what's on top, and then waiting till marriage, condom, selfish to abort. All of those are kind of things that people should do because the fetus should have the opportunity to be born. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, that's what I believe, and also just like from a biblical perspective too, it's like it's also just like you're murdering another life, and that's wrong, and it's like but I do believe that fetus should have the opportunity to be born and live life, and I believe that if you let that fetus live the life, it can change you as a person, for the better, because when most women have babies, it's like they change in certain situations, and I believe it would give you having a baby would give you the opportunity to grow and maybe bring out a side that you have not brought out before.
Gotcha. With regards to having an opportunity to be born, why is this concept important?
Well, I believe this concept is important because, well, I don't know. It kind of like pretty much all started a couple of years back when I used to work in Times Square, and I saw this one dude with a pro with the anti-abortion sign, and he asked me questions. I don't really remember all the questions, but I do know that I did say hey, if I don't support it, but if the person has the abortion, then I just don't care. And ever since that day, it's like, oh, sorry about that. Ever since, just outside, but ever since then, it's it's just really stuck in my head, and that has just been, I guess, my driving force in a way.
Okay. Okay. You're still in New York, still in Times Square? It sounds like it.
No, I mean,
No?
Times Square was yeah, no, I worked in Times Square.
Gotcha.
I'm in another borough. I'm in Queens.
Well, it sounds like New York to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never been to New York, but that's what I imagine it sounds like.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's much louder in Times Square.
I imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, the honking totally distracted me. So you said 2 years ago you were working in Times Square. You saw this guy with a sign. It was
Yeah.
a anti-abortion sign.
Yeah, and
And
it piqued. Yeah, yeah, and it just piqued my interest a lot.
okay, and
'Cause,
then you kind of looked into it. Is that what happened?
yeah, I mean, I kind of looked into it, but it's I was also kind of thinking about it a lot. That day, because it's just, I don't know. It's he was he was right. I mean, it is wrong, and I don't believe you should do it. And I guess I was kind of on before. I feel like I always had this opinion, but it's I just kind of held back. I pretty much held back. It's I didn't necessarily say I fully don't support abortion, but I never said I do support abortion. I guess I was I guess I used to be someone in the middle. It's I understood why people did it, but I also understood why people didn't want it to happen.
Okay. I think I may have missed part of your answer. The honking may have distracted me. Who knows? So with the opportunity to be born, why is that important?
Why? What's important? The opportunity to be born.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I would say it's important for any life to be born is because, well, simply, I mean, well, for one, it's the other guy said about the bloodline. It's you're pretty much shortening your bloodline, and also it's this unborn person be a great could be a great person, whether can be also it would also not only a great person in society, but also like it can also further. It's like the other guy said, also like further the kingdom of God, because ultimately speaking, the very fact that like you're taking it upon yourself to like disrupt like what God has in plan for like has in plan for you. It's like it's selfish, you know.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. Hmm. So with the bloodline, is that kind of with what the other fellow said? You said it was regards to God's plan. Is that kind of the same thing for you, or were you referring to something different?
No, it was like pretty much the same thing. It's like it's
Okay.
just God's plan. It's God's plan. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm learning.
All
But
right.
yeah, it's like I would say like there's a reason why there's a reason why like a woman got pregnant. Maybe it was in the like it was most likely in the cards for like for it to happen for you, and so that ultimately speaking, God can like change you. That would give God the opportunity to like change your heart and like change the way you live your life. And I would say like and when you invite God in your life, man, it's like um he changes you. He truly does. And I'd say like I could explain it, but it's like ultimately speaking, you'd have to feel the experience for yourself, because there's only so much that I can say about that.
I want to build a little bit of like a tower here. At least that's the analogy that I'm going to use. So at the
All
top
right.
we have like abortion. You shouldn't have an abortion, right? And then
Yeah.
what's supporting that would be like the opportunity to be born. And then supporting that under that piece, would that be like the bloodline? Would that be that that person could be a great person? What's that supporting piece under there?
Well, I'd say like first I would say like it would start at the top, like the reasons why not to have an abortion. The first one is always God. God is always first, and the second one is, well, what did you say like the first one was again? um
It was the right to opportunity to be born.
oh yeah, all right, I would say like God. I would say like God, like the first thing is like God, and the second thing is the opportunity to be born, and the third is also like the bloodline, because ultimately speaking it's like uh like you're pretty much like just shortening your bloodline. It's like and you're preventing like your family from growing, and like also just living like for like another like decade, another like couple like years or two, like pretty much um because after that it's like when you don't have a kid, it's like after that it's like your bloodline is over, it's done.
Hmm. Is that something that's really important?
I'd say like the last year, yeah, it has become like important to me, because ultimately speaking, I think I try to put myself in like a I don't know, I try to put myself in like I try to like think of like what if my mom had an abortion, or what if my or like what if someone I knew had an abortion, and it's like I try to just put myself in that position. And when it comes to certain things, I try to put myself in like the perspective of like what happens if that was me. And if I wasn't born, or if my sister wasn't born, or other sister, like our bloodline would be deceased, like we would be no more, like after my parents, there'll be no one else left.
Gotcha.
It has become a little bit more important to me, like as like I've been taking this walk for about like 1 year.
It sounds like what you're describing, if I were to put it in my own words, it would sound something like you have this empathy for others, and that's kind of where you're coming from. Does that sound about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because
Where do you think that comes from?
um I'll be honest, I hmm I don't hmm I would say like I'll be honest. I believe like I believe most of it comes from. I wanna say it comes from me, but I guess like before I was empathetic like to certain things, but I wasn't empathetic to like other things. It's like it used to be 50-50 with me, but I'd say like I would say like to an extent it does come from me, but it also comes from God above too, because like God
Mm.
gave me this gave me like the majority of this empathy. Like I had it before, but it's just I guess it's just heightened with my faith, you know.
Hmm.
And I just feel, and it's like there's just certain things I feel strongly about now, um, because of God, you know.
Okay. Okay. What is there anything that you could learn or discover that might make you go from probably shouldn't have an abortion to abortion, it's okay. That's not the worst thing that you could do. It's okay. Is there anything that you could
I,
learn to make you have that jump?
I would say no. I mean, like I can learn it. I can understand where you're coming from, but ultimately speaking, it still won't make me make that jump.
Okay.
You know, just because it's like you're you're killing a life. You're getting rid of someone, like by your own free will.
Okay.
And
Hmm. If there was a hypothetical scenario where you you discovered something that changed your mind about the opportunity to be born, you no longer thought that was you never no longer valued that, you didn't think that was important anymore. How would that change your stance towards abortion?
oh, hold on, can you repeat that again, please?
If you no longer valued the opportunity to be born, how would that change your stance on abortion?
Um, hmm. I'll be honest. I don't really have a precise answer, but I'll try to think of one. I believe if I didn't see any like value in like being born, you said.
Yeah, yeah, the opportunity to be born.
Um, hmm. I would say that's a tough. I would say that's a tough one. I can't necessarily. I don't really necessarily know how to like answer that because I just don't see myself. I just don't see myself like thinking that way because
Hmm.
ultimately speaking, it's like you know I could probably see. I don't know. It's like I ever since I was young, I always just thought it would be cool to like have a like a kid that looks like similar to me like running around. So it's like I really don't think I would think that way because like I think from like when I was young, I always wanted a kid that would look
Hmm.
like me, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to like have some like something that was of me, like a son that looked exactly like me, and or like a daughter,
Mhm.
and you know just have a family. So
I
I don't really think I could ever think that way.
If you don't mind me asking, Eric, how old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Okay. Well, you got plenty of time to make that happen.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all the questions I got for you right now. Do you have any questions for me?
Hmm. What made you determine like the current worldview that you have right now?
Hmm. There's a lot of there's influences. Growing up, I grew up slightly religious. I don't even know how to explain it. My mom was Catholic, but I never really got on board with that. It wasn't a priority at the household. So I that's kind of how I was raised. Uh, then growing up, I kind of had a mentality of we should go by whatever we observe, And then recently, I kind of found out how important our human universal needs are, and how really they influence our values and what we value, and our strategies for fulfilling those needs. So that kind of opened my eyes up in a big way. Uh, and that's kind of a concept in a lot of different fields of psychology, but specifically, Marshall Rosenberg wrote about that in his book, Nonviolent Communication.
Mm.
So hopefully that
All right.
answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it does, man. How long have you been atheist agnostic for so far?
I can't really remember a time when I wasn't, so I guess forever-ish.
Got you. All right. Well, it was nice talking to you, Pierce, and I really appreciate you for bringing me up here.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Eric.
Anytime.
All right. Oh, okay. Who do we have next? Let's go with Haley. Is Haley still here? Haley is still here. Hello there, Haley.
Hello. So
Hello.
my point is more of like in the middle, but like more towards one side. I believe, like as the first person was saying, it is technically a form of murder, which is biblically wrong. But I think also there could be some exceptions, like if, for example, the pregnant woman has a risk of dying, or the baby has a risk of dying, or even both. I feel like there could be some sort of exception there to like save life as well. Because like if there's a complication, um, like the mom could also die, but also the baby could die, which would be like both of them could die. Or like if abortion was an option to save the mother's life, I think that would be like an understanding option to like keep the mother's life. Like there are some exceptions with it, but I feel like it shouldn't be used as like a form of like, for example, Plan B or something.
So you said a lot of great things there that I think really helped me understand your position. So you said that you kind of agree that abortion is a form of murder, but then there are some exceptions, like if the mother's life is in jeopardy, then perhaps to preserve the mother's life, it might be okay to have an abortion.
Yeah.
So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the underlying value here is preserving human life.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And in I think I can understand in the event of the mother's life, that she's obviously a human adult. It would be important to preserve her life, and I think that's where you're coming from. With regards to the fetus and preserving the fetus's life, or the mother's life, we could talk about both, perhaps. Why are these important to you?
I think it's important because, like, similar to the first person, I'm not sure how to say his name, so I'm not going to try, but to make sure that as much human life can be saved, like, death can be prevented of either the mom or the like child. It depends on the circumstance.
Okay. So it's kind of like the trolley problem. If there's a
Yeah.
train coming down the tracks, there's one person tied up on the left side, and that's where the train's going to go, and there's three people on the right side. You would pull the lever to make it go, or going towards the three people, and you'd pull the lever and make it go towards the one person.
Yeah, but I also feel like there can be like a lot of complications with that because, like, what if, for example, the person on one side is like, oh, like, what if like the three people on one side, for example, like are convicted like prisoners who escaped, like just like a random example, and the left side is a good civilized individual. Like I feel like there's a lot of like I forgot the word you used, but like there's a lot of like breaks that you have, and you have to like think about like each option more than just like the number.
Okay. The number isn't necessarily important. There's more of
It's
a nuance to it. Is that the word you're looking for?
both in a way. Like it really depends on the circumstance, but both matter. But if you're really going into like the scenario, like I think it's also important to look at each individual that is involved in the scenario.
So let me. I want to help me clarify what exactly you're saying here. So I think the best way to do it might be an example. So you brought up. I think you said a prisoner. Like is that what you
Yeah,
had
like
said? Okay.
like
Okay. There's a.
like a morally bad person.
Okay. There's a prisoner who is serving a really long sentence or something. Who knows? And they're tied to the train track, and then I'm tied to the train track. And you get to decide where the train goes. Where does the train go?
Like in between like the like the person who's serving a long sentence and who's the other person.
Me. This guy.
You're just bad scenario here. But I'd probably turn it to go to the other person, but I feel like that's also a form of murder, so like it is also still wrong. But like if we go down to like the individual, like it's more than just picking who is who and like just complete like that's wrong because it's murder. Like I feel like you have to dive deeper, which is like what we're doing.
Yeah,
So I think
let's do that.
it's still morally wrong to an extent, but it's like with the situation you're given, it's hard to choose in between those situations.
Right. Could there be a way to make a choice that is right or wrong in that scenario?
I feel like it's more of the like who you're talking to. Like for example, I am Christian, so like if I'm going from a biblical standpoint, it is murder. But like an abortion is murder. Like with the train situation, the trolley, it is both still murder. So to an extent, it is wrong. But with like that situation, I feel like it's not like a full pass, but it's an understanding motive, like an understanding reason.
Okay. It's
I'm sorry if I start smiling. I'm looking at the chat.
okay. I try not to look at it too much. What was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought here. Pun not intended. So with regards to like the mother and the fetus, so it sounds like what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is it would still be murder for the pregnant woman to have an abortion, even though it's jeopardizing her life, but it's understandable.
Yeah, like it's biblically wrong, but with the situation given, it is like the best, like in my opinion, the best scenario and action to move forward. But like with pro-choice and pro-life, I think it should be up to the not only the person who is wanting to have the abortion, but also a medical professional. Because if like as I said before, it shouldn't be used as like a plan B or like it shouldn't be used as like a little too late condom. Like you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't be
Okay.
used like in like especially because having an abortion can also lead to like complications. Because like anything really can have complications in it. Abortion's just one of those things, and it's not good to have like abortion upon abortion upon abortion. And also that is still like a traumatic event to the woman's body, but so is childbirth. But having it repetitively is not really a good thing.
Yeah, I think I can understand that. So I think what you're saying was that if you're going to use it as birth control, that probably would be a scenario in which that would be unacceptable. If you're
Yeah.
using it just as a life-saving measure, then that would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I think I understand your perspective. Well, if someone were to come up here and they had a different stance, they thought that it was acceptable to use as a form of birth control. What do you suspect, or what do you think would be the best reason they could possibly have for having that stance?
I think like if I would be thinking from that perspective, my like argument, which I don't believe this, but my argument would be the mother's like mental health, but also her physical health is still important in the situation. So like I would counter that with her physical health, because an abortion isn't something to be taken as light as like plan B. It's a medical procedure.
Okay.
But I feel making abortion completely unable to be found is also putting more people in danger than not. I think it should be in between like a medical professional and the person who wants to have or needs, in like a scenario, needs to have the abortion for health like purposes and like life or death.
Gotcha. In a scenario, you said that it was the best argument, but you didn't agree with it, would be for the mother's mental health. If there,
Yeah.
what I'm going to ask you a question, and this is kind of testing the limits, I guess you could say. It's bringing up kind of an extreme example just to see kind of where you're at. So if the mother was always really good with birth control, and then for some reason that birth control did not work that one particular time, and she had the desire to get this abortion, how would you feel about that scenario?
I would look deeper into it, because I would look into like, is she physically capable of giving birth to this child? Will the child be like, will it be safe for the child to be born?
Let's say yes.
For me, I was a planned C-section, so like I didn't really have any complications, but there is the possibility of having complications. And I think it should generally be a possibility to have an abortion if it's saving like the mother's life, because
Yeah.
like if the mother's sick, that means most likely, like in most scenarios, the child could also be sick. But there could be preventable measures for that. But if the child is most likely going to not make it, and if the child doesn't make it, like there would be like severe complications with the mother, like even death, I think it would be the safest option would be an abortion. But I still think to an extent that it is morally wrong with abortion in general. But like with, as I was saying before, with the two options, I think that's the best option.
Gotcha. In this hypothetical scenario, let's say both parties, the fetus and the mother, both excellent health, no suspected complications to occur. They had been using birth control. For whatever reason, it didn't work in that particular moment, even though it was used. The mother desires to have an abortion. In that scenario, it sounds like you would be against it. You would say that would not be acceptable.
I think it would be acceptable to put it up for adoption, but not. I don't think that an abortion would be necessary in that scenario, as
Mhm.
long as the mother can give birth to the child safely. I think it would be fine for the mother to just put it up for adoption rather than like completely not give it a chance of life.
Okay, gotcha. Do you think that you brought up the best argument against your position would be the mother's mental health? Is there what's driving that? Do you think? I know you disagree with it, but what do you think's
Um,
behind that layer?
there's a lot of things that can happen to a mother after childbirth, like postpartum depression,
Mhm.
etc. But like that I think it would be easier to or like morally better for that mother to go and get help, get like talk to someone about it, get a therapist, possibly if needed, have preventable measures so that they don't have like as bad as a mental health problem. But like it also like if the mental health scenario, if the mother like for example wants like says straight up, if I have this child I will try to commit suicide, like if like just a scenario like that, I think
Mhm.
that there should be preventable measures, like for example psychiatric help or something, because but I don't think that the mom should have like I don't think the mom would be in the right headspace to take care of the child. And I think that it would be more suitable for the mom to get help, but also for the child to be put into a home where the mother would be more stable, like the like parent would be another like family that would be more stable for the child's environment, because the like the upbringing of a child is very important to how someone acts, like for example
Yeah.
if a up like poor, they're gonna be like looking at price tags. But if someone's like upper class, they like more or less like maybe they won't be so like thinking about price. Like just an example. So the upbringing really like matters. So I think the safest option would for the mother to get psychiatric mental help and for the child to be placed in a different home, and at least until the mother is in the right headspace, or if the mother wishes to have the child in a different family, that would be okay.
Okay. I I think I understand what you're saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong again. It sounds like in this scenario, you would place a higher value on the life of the fetus than you would on the mother's mental health. Is that accurate?
Not fully. I think
Uh,
that they're both important, but I think there could be preventative measures to more or less like if an abortion, like you can't bring the child back, but a mother's health can go get better eventually with the right like support.
Okay. Okay. So one option is permanent, while the other one
It's
there's a
temp-
possibility of recovery.
yeah.
Okay, I understand. Is there anything you could learn or discover that would make you go from pro-life to pro-choice?
Um, most likely not, but I think that I could, like, if I see like a separate point, I could be more understanding to having like a mother having an abortion, but I think that my standpoint, like, I try to make it like as morally like just as the situation gives. And I feel like I'd also have the same standpoint if I was an atheist, like minus the biblical text, like
Mhm.
just my like personal like morals as how I was as an atheist. I believe like it depends on medical complications and such.
Gotcha. If this is going to be kind of a crazy hypothetical, but stick with me. Stick with me, please. If you were to discover somehow that the fetus, you determined to your own satisfaction that it wasn't actually a human life yet of some sort. I don't know
think
how that's possible.
Sorry, my PC just started bugging me. But I think that the like more or less it is a like it's not technically like it's still a unborn child, but it's still murder if the child gets killed. But like there's some exceptions like with health complications. So I believe it is still abortion is still murder, but it can be understanding like if like more or less understanding given the complications.
If you were to discover like after contraception till week 10, let's say, just for a really extreme example, from that period to that period, if you were somehow to discover that sure the cells combine, but it doesn't actually combine the DNA that makes it actually human life, the sperm kind of stays separate. And this isn't reality. This is a hypothetical. In that hypothetical situation, would you still be against having an abortion in that time period?
Again, like it depends on like what the purpose is and such. Like it's more than just like that. You have to go like deeper into it. Like as it sounds really weird, but like as like specific as possible.
Okay. What specifics would it matter on? Like
all the details, like what the purpose, like what would the reason of having the abortion be? Like, is it a safe procedure for the mom to do? Is it like is the mom using it as a form of birth control, like et cetera, et cetera?
Let's say it's her desire, wasn't necessarily using it as a birth control, but does desire to have the abortion. Everybody's otherwise healthy.
So like, but what would the purpose be of the abortion?
She just wants to have it.
Just because like she doesn't want to like raise a child?
Doesn't want to go through the pregnancy. Also doesn't want to raise the child. That's also part of it. Doesn't want the child to go into the system either.
Yeah, the foster care system is, but I think that it more or less would be morally, like I would morally be against that because I don't really like see a purpose in not letting a child have like life, like a future child have life. But I also think it's important to make sure that said like future child goes like that child goes into a good home, which that's also important with like adoption. I have like a few friends who are adopted who went through the system, and from what I've heard from just in general, the system isn't the best. So personally, like if like this was like probably not gonna happen, but hypothetical, if I was to like I was looking to put my future child, like let's just say I'm pregnant, like I'm not, but hypothetically I'm pregnant and I want to look for an adoption, like to put the future child up for like the child up for adoption. I would like it would be important to make sure the child goes into a suitable home rather than just throwing it into the foster care system and not caring about it. Because again, the upbringing of a child is super duper important.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. I probably start moving on to a few other folks here. Do you have any questions for me before I move you back to the audience?
I'm good.
Okay,
Bye.
terrific. Thank you for talking. All right. No, the Sapphire wanted to chat. I'll bring him on up.
Pierce, how goes it, bro?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right, going all right. Had a lot going on, pretty crazy stuff, but we're good. Everyone's healthy, so can't complain.
You know, as long as that's going on, you know, life is good, right?
Yeah, yeah. I saw just recently, actually, you hit over 800 subscribers, bro. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
You guys remember to go to Pierce's channel and subscribe so you can help push him over 1,000.
I would like that. Then I can start working on those watch hours.
Oh yeah, bro. But I'm actually, as soon as I saw your post on the community tab on YouTube, I knew I had to join and have this conversation because I figured you're one of the perfect people to have this type of conversation with. You're going to ask questions. You're going to do it dispassionately, and I really appreciate that because I feel like one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest hurdles in these types of conversations or like quote unquote debates is just the emotionality. People tend to bring a lot of personal feelings to the table rather than focusing on, just the philosophy or the facts of the matter.
That's so interesting that you bring that up. Because I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And I know it appears a lot of times like I'm doing that. And maybe I am to a certain degree. But I think I would actually like to get away from that. And I know it sounds like blasphemous or something, right? But I think going back to like the underlying need that is supporting whatever claim. If it's a truth claim, that might be a little rough. But if it's a normative claim like abortion, that's what I think it is, a normative claim. I think it's so important to talk about those needs, and ultimately, I think it's a judgment based on uh, probably some sort of feeling, empathy, desire for something. Anyways, but yeah, I appreciate all the good things that you said about me, though. I will take the
For sure, bro.
compliment.
Well, I do think that compassion should be in the forefront of the conversation, specifically around abortion. First and foremost, I want to get my biases out of the way. I am a Christian, so we can assume Christian ethic and motivations, right? I'm also a father. I have 3 children of my own. I was not always a Christian. I was not always a father. So my position has changed over the course of my lifetime. For the most part, though, I would like to say that I really appreciate all of the stances that were brought up before me. There were a lot of good points that were raised on the religious side, on the utilitarian side, even because I saw some of the conversation going on in the side chat, and I feel like it's a little bit of a misconception that like being pro-life is explicitly, a Christian value. I feel like if you look at the majority of the world, people are being born. There's families. They don't have to be Christian. There's Hindus families, there's Muslim families, there's Jewish families, et cetera, et cetera. People seem to place a high value on children. The safety of children seems paramount in most societies anyway. Even children that are not necessarily your own. We have systems in place for adoption. And I would venture to say that more often than not, if you find yourself in a public setting and there's a little child kind of wandering around, bumping around, maybe getting into a little bit of trouble, you can, to a degree, rely on your community to sort of like watch out for the kid in general. Like I feel like the average person won't let a little baby walk into the street, So just from the pragmatic sense, like you don't have to be Christian to value children. And I think that where the real focus is on the abortion conversation is that, what really constitutes personhood? Because this is first, like a lot a legal discussion. I think most people don't deny the humanity of these children and unborn children, but the conversation seems to be mostly focused on like things like personhood, sentience, viability, all these sorts of things, right? So if you wanted to kind of hone in on that, we could, or if you had other questions.
Yeah, let's hone in on that. Let's get specific here. You know what? I don't know your position on it yet, and you can tell me if you want, or you can keep it a secret. Maybe we should keep it a secret. That might be interesting. Let's do that. You want to do that? Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as I can.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So, actually, this might be hard. I think this next question I ask is going to reveal it anyways.
Maybe.
But you know what? That's okay. So, you brought up like maybe three. It's either two or three. Two of them might be the same. You brought up personhood, viability, and sentience. Maybe those are three different things. Of these three different things, which is the most important in determining if abortion is okay or not?
Well, for me, I would argue that it's definitely going to be the personhood. And I would say that it's not a legal definition of person. It's a more it is a more religious definition. It would be tying into the humanity of the unborn individual, right? Because I think there are arguments to be made, for people being born that are not necessarily like whole. Like you could have someone who's born without a leg. The fact that they're born with one leg detract from the overall quality of their life so much that it would justify just terminating the pregnancy. Like if you knew the baby was going to be born malformed in some way, does that really cross the threshold where you would just, it's better that they would be dead. I tell you right now, if I lost a leg in a freak accident, I wouldn't be better off dead. I'd still very much want to be alive. I'd find ways to accommodate that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
I definitely would say personhood in that sense, like just the underlying humanity more than the viability, because there's always an inherent risk. And then the sentience argument, I guess you would say like, I wouldn't even argue that like children, 1 to 3 are even like fully sentient. Like they're obviously little people and they're formulating, but there's a certain, I guess we would call it like age of accountability, where there's a certain point where they fully realize like their ego, their personal identity, right? They become like their own individuated person. So I'd say that like, from the ages of 1 to 3, before they are fully realized little individuals, I'd say they still have that same value, and they might not qualify as fully sentient even in that stage.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's concentrate on personhood. I'm not sure if you gave the example of the leg, and I agree with you on that example, by the way. With regards to personhood, I'm not entirely sure what that entails. What is that all about?
Well, as a Christian, this is where the religious point of view will come in. For me personally, I feel like that each individual person has an unquantifiable intrinsic value. And this is like extends to everybody, and it's not just like some people were talking about, you brought up the example of you've got like a normal everyday law abiding citizen versus a criminal, would there be some sort of like difference in value? And I would say inherently no. And I think that's consistent with our religion, right? Christ did not die for the righteous man, but he died, for the sinner. So I think it would be kind of like, at least from a Christian point of view, it's kind of betraying your own values in a way to like value one life over another for something like, this person could be like a liar or a thief or whatever, because while someone's alive, there's always an opportunity for repentance. So like someone could live a whole life full of evil and awful things and being a horrible person, and they could come to a position where they truly repent and they are truly remorseful over those things, and they come to worship and know God, and that redemption is every bit as glorious as the redemption that like the quote unquote average person stands to gain in Christ.
I think
So
I think I get where you're coming from. Yeah,
there's like an
all
inherent
people.
value to all people. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, everybody is kind of equal in the eyes of God, and each personhood. Gotcha.
Mhm.
With regards to personhood, when does that begin?
Well, in a legal sense, it begins after birth, and I think that
Mhm.
that's really where the meat of the debate really is when people, because I feel like in a practical sense, pro-life people, quote unquote, are really arguing that the person inside the womb should have legal rights and protections, that they have a right to life, they have a right to be born. I see most people that have gone before me have asserted something to that effect, and I feel like when you're pro-choice, it's inherently the other side. This is not a person until they're born, and therefore they don't benefit from like protections from the law. So it's by definition not murder from a legal standpoint, because they're not born as a citizen of any nation yet. They don't benefit from having rights in a explicitly legal sense. So, but I don't think, pragmatically speaking, people really live that way. You know what I mean? Even pro-choice people, because there are pro-choice people who legally want the protections for abortion, but they themselves have kids and wouldn't have aborted their children, right?
Yeah.
So, practically speaking, I really do feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between like where we place our value. I really feel like people value children very highly, but they also value a perceived sort of freedom in abortion also very highly. Like 62% of people in America are pro-abortion. So, it stands to reason like a technical majority would like to reserve the right in some capacity, even if they're not going to practice it.
Okay. Gotcha. With regards to personhood and personhood supporting whatever stance you have, which I still don't know what it is, and that's good. Are you using the legal definition to support that stance, or is it a different definition?
I'm not.
Okay.
And I this is why I'm glad you guys had the conversations before. You guys mentioned like scientific terminology. You guys brought up the question with Haley just a minute ago about the time before the sperm and the egg was able to complete and form a zygote.
Mhm.
Scientifically speaking, and this is the Christian position, right? Life begins at conception. If you look at any scientific textbook, you'll see that the zygote is literally the first stage of a human life, just in the most explicit technical terms. A zygote is alive, and it does contain 100% of the DNA that the adult human that will ultimately be the end product of that zygote will have. So all the necessary components are there for that person. And I would argue from the scientific standpoint that the moment of conception is when we should legally recognize personhood.
Okay.
And to your point, I would argue that like the time before the zygote and the egg, but the time before conception, that would not constitute an abortion. Like Plan B, I recently learned, I thought that I fell victim a little bit to the propaganda. Plan B is often touted as an aborticant. It's touted as a contraceptive in the sense that it's an emergency pill that you can take where it'll sort of like zap the egg and it won't make a baby. That's actually not the case. Plan B contains a synthetic hormone that prevents ovulation. So it works in like a condom in pill form. So it is effectively the same thing as using a condom.
Right.
I have different arguments for like birth control and stuff like that, but I want to keep it focused on abortion for tonight.
Yeah.
But I would argue that like fundamentally preventing a pregnancy is not the same as terminating a pregnancy, and they don't carry the same moral implications.
So, with regards to personhood, as defined not legally, but as life beginning at conception, why is that important?
Well, you could say for me, you know, as a father, I feel like there was a sort of there was a transition that took place from before I had kids to after I had kids. I'm sure you might have experienced this in your own life, but I just had this change in understanding. A new paradigm shift occurred once I actually had my own children, and I realized that, like, you know, part of me was tied up irrevocably in this human being's life. And for whatever reason, internally or externally, you could say I was raised this way or whatever. I genuinely feel like there was a deep upswell of internal connection. I really feel like my children don't just belong to me, but they are little me's, and I owe everything to them, really. But outside of the emotional appeal, I mean, you could people have made, and their religious appeals, you can make the utilitarian argument. Society just does not function without people in it. A healthy society just logically stands that they would be able to have as many children as they would desire. They would be able to provide for all of those children. They'd be able to give them good homes, healthy lifestyles. And I feel like we see that all around us. People live in a way that is conducive to growing families and children. Like I said, even people without children will look out for children almost instinctively. I feel like there's a biological motivation behind it as well in a lot of senses. So you can have a lot of motivations for why it's important. But for me, I would say a lot of it does come from the fact that I am a Christian, but mostly I would say because I am a father, and there's just that experiential part of, like, I've participated in the practice of creating a life, and I am responsible for multiple lives. And rather than it seeming like an obstacle or like a problem to solve, it seems like, it is a source of vitality for me. It gives me a motivation to keep going. I'm able to produce things. I have a desire for creativity and fun that is outside of, like, the soul sucking, minutia of day to day, like, working life. I come home and there's little people that are just perfectly innocent, and all they want to do is build blocks and play dinosaurs, and it's pretty magical.
So it kind of sounds like that's really tied to your thoughts on personhood and life beginning at conception is your love for your children and the connection that you have with them. And it sounds like you want other children or potential children to have that experience, and parents to also have that experience. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be awesome. It's not for everybody, obviously. I wouldn't say that, like, it should be mandated. Like, obviously people shouldn't be, like, forced to have kids. But I don't think, I do think that it is a overall good. And like I said, there's got to be people for there to be a society in any sense. So the way that we get people is by having kids.
Is this love? Can I call it love for shorthand?
Yeah, man. And I don't think it's like, needs to be explicitly quantifiable. I feel like we've all felt it. We all know it.
Right. Okay. Would it be fair to say that love is ultimately the driving force behind your position?
Yeah, brother. To tell you the truth, yeah. And I honestly was waiting for, like, the perfect opportunity to employ it. But, the scripture does say that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. There's a real principle here in the Christian mindset and the Christian paradigm where we want more life. We are seeking in every way to avoid death, not just in terms of like abortion, but even at the end, we want to pass, like it says, from death to life. We want to have a new life in Christ, and we want more and more of it. We don't ever want it to stop, and that's okay that other people don't feel that way. But for us, I feel like the primary motivator there is that we do feel that sense of love. It pervades all things for us, and we just want to maximize that sense, even unto eternity.
Gotcha. With regards to this love, and specifically this love that is the driving force for your position, does this love come from within you, or does it come from God? I know you kind of brought up the religious part.
Well, there are types of love.
Mhm.
The scripture does say love is an essential part of God. It says it equates God with love. It says God is love. We take that in my tradition to mean that this is part of his nature, and that
Mhm.
all things that he does, the way that he interacts with us through his energies, they are done through love, in love. And a big part of that is that it's relational and synergetic. Love does not happen in a monad. You don't have a singular object of love. There is a subject and an object there. When you love someone. If you just love yourself, you're a narcissist. So there's an inherent relational aspect to love. There's always a subject and a predicate there, where we see that in the Godhead. We see that throughout our relationship with Christ, and we see that further down with our relationships with our kids. So I think, that's probably the biggest factor there, honestly, more than anything.
Okay. I think I understand your perspective pretty good. I think I'll ask one last question.
Mhm.
What could you learn or discover? I assume you are pro-life, it sounds
I
like.
am.
What could get you to go to the other side?
You know, there would have to be like I'm not gonna say nothing, because anything could happen. But it would have to be massive. I mean, it would have to be like a fundamental, like paradigm shifting thing, and there's things that could take place in a person's life that could do that to them. But it would have to be big. It's a pretty inherent quality, I'd say, at this point. It's like I said, because it's tied up with my experience of being a father, and you can't undo that. That's never going to go away. Even if I outlive my kids, like, I will still have this feeling of love for them. I will still have this experience of being a father and wanting to have my kids. So it'd be very hard. Like I said, not impossible. Anything can happen, but I think that for the most part, it's less about the explicit details, right? Like, I would love to place faith in the community and the society as a whole, and say we'll figure it out with kids that are born into bad circumstances or given up for adoption or whatever. But I think it's more about the starting principle of, we really do want to preserve life and see life fully realized. So, I think that's it's pretty it's the stance is here to stay for me.
Okay. All right. Last thing, I just want to ask for some feedback. Did these questions help you consider all aspects of your position? Did it do anything for you?
Yeah, always, brother. I love these conversations. That's why I take every opportunity I can to hop in here. You're a great guy with a great platform, and it's always good to see you doing your thing, man.
Thank you. And I just want to give a shout out to your channel. I know it's steadily growing along, so everybody can go and subscribe to him. Great channel.
Check me out. You can check me out by clicking on my profile. I'm at youtube.com/hardlightnetwork. You can also catch me on X, Tingus McMingus. So I'll see you guys. Appreciate you for having me on, bro.
All right. Thanks. Take care. All right, we got our final two folks. So I'm kind of putting the line here. Line ends here. So just the final two. If you put your hand up, unfortunately, I won't be able to get to you. We'll bring Bray. Not sure how to pronounce that, but we'll bring Jan up, and then we'll bring Taylor up next. How's it going?
Hey, it's going. It's been a long day.
Has it?
Yeah, I had to get up at 2 for work, but it's that's always fun.
Yeah, that's early. Are you in a time zone where it's not super late right now?
It's currently 9:37 p.m. So
Oh, you're in
thankfully,
Central. Okay, it's getting
yeah,
there. It's getting
it's
there.
getting there. But thankfully, I don't have to work for the next 4 days, which is
Oh,
nice.
okay. Yeah, you can
So
stay up
it's
till 2 a.m., right?
yeah, just make up for that.
Right. All right. So I guess what brings you up on the stage? Why did you raise your hand?
Okay. Well, obviously we're here for the abortion talk, but for me, my kind of like my stance is it's on the personal end, but it's also on the just a moral end. For me, best way to put it was I was a failed abortion. My mother, decided she was going to have an abortion. She never really wanted kids. She never thought she would even get pregnant. But so basically kind of like what transpired with my view is I she tried to have an abortion, like a late term abortion, but that didn't work. I was like, you know what? No, I'm coming out. I'm done. So she went into labor. I popped out. She took care of me for 2 years, but then she decided, yep, nope, I'm not gonna do this. But instead of the foster system or being adopted, I was just placed with basically a random lady who she didn't know, I didn't know. And the only way that I actually like lived with this lady was a total god thing. It was out of nowhere, and all of like in all of like the in all of the I guess things kind of just like fell into place and things just happened the way that they were supposed to happen, in my opinion. However, when it comes to the whole medical side of abortion, that's when things for me start to get a little iffy. I When it comes to abortion, when it comes to like risking like mother's life, child's life, when it comes to that, that's when my opinion starts to shift. Um, that's when I'm like, I don't know what I believe. I'm still a very firm believer in I don't think you should have an abortion under any circumstances, but that's when my opinion starts to kind of like, okay, hold on. I don't have a solid opinion for that. But when it comes to just like kind of like what everybody else has been saying, using it as like a birth control, like I believe that like when you best way to put it is when you open your legs and you decide to have sex, there is always like a possibility of having there is a possibility of getting pregnant, whether you use birth control, a condom, whatever. But that doesn't mean that I'm a Christian. I think that you shouldn't have sex until you're married. But for some people, they don't believe that, and I can't control what they do or what they don't do. But I think that it should always be just like somewhere in your head that like, okay, if I do this, like this could happen, and whatever happens after that is on me.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm understanding your position. So it sounds like you are pro-life entirely. However, when it comes to when the mother's life is at risk, that is possibly an exception. You're kind of undecided on that particular circumstance.
Yes.
Okay.
It was it was always it was just something that like I didn't know anybody who had any complications with with like birth and stuff like that. So a more I don't have like a more personal view for that. But when it comes to kind of just like an overall view, like when it comes to like if there's complications, I think it should always be a very last resort, like, and if it is going to and if it is like something that is going to happen, I it's this is for me when it gets really tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Is I want to say it should be last resort, but at the same time, I think it should be you want to catch it as soon as possible because you don't want to put a whole lot of strain on yourself emotionally, physically, because if you've carried a pregnancy to 7 months and then you realize that okay, this isn't this I've done all I can do, there's nothing else that I can do um to save myself and or save the baby because I want to say you should catch it sooner, but at the same time sometimes that's not an option. I am somebody who if you I don't think there's a place where you should say, okay, this is where you should stop for when it comes to a medically necessary abortion. Because I don't think that a medically a medical like necessary abortion is a thing. Because it's something about kind of just the wording, just medically necessary is it doesn't seem like a very good word of a combination of words for an
Let's try
abortion.
to laser focus this this
Yes,
scenario. Yeah. Let me construct a hypothetical scenario, and then maybe we
please
can
do.
address specifically that one. Thank you. Right. So let's say there is a woman, and she is very responsible. Always uses birth control. Has no desire to have a child. For whatever reason, she ends up pregnant, even though birth control was used,
Hmm.
and there's no medical problems with her or the fetus. All are healthy.
Hmm.
It sounds like you would be opposed to her being able to get an abortion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I just don't think it's something that's necessary. It shouldn't be. It's not. Okay, my brain's all over the place. So for me, abortion is okay. Hold on, my brain's it's working. Okay, here we go. So I'm opposed to people having abortion, even if it is just an accident, because I believe that there is no such thing as accidents. Even if she's done everything on her end, that um, I believe that God, like, even if she doesn't want the child, there are other ways to not not necessarily take responsibility for the child. But like people have said, like there's the foster system, there's the child being put up for adoption. I'm not a big supporter of the foster system because of personal experiences.
Mhm.
I think that there should be other ways for children to find a home. Something similar to what happened to me. I'm not going to go into that because that's a big, long, different conversation. I believe that there should be I think if you genuinely don't want a child and you know you won't be able to take care of it, I
Mhm.
think you should try and find somewhere where this child is going to be cared for, loved for, in a good, stable environment, somewhere where the child isn't going to be um hurt, like it isn't going to be
Yeah.
an at-risk child.
Let's take that out of the circumstance. Let's say that there is that possibility. I'm not saying that there is. I'm I'm not saying that they wouldn't have to go through, the system, but in this scenario, let's say that they would have some sort of acceptable home to go to. And in
I
this
think-
scenario, it's more about the mother's desire not to go through a pregnancy.
I think when you're carrying a child inside of you, your body isn't completely yours anymore because you are carrying something that has the opportunity to become something more. It has the opportunity to become a human. I believe that it's a baby, like when it's inside the womb. I believe that. But if we're stepping away from that, but not when you get pregnant, your body isn't completely yours. You're nurturing something that is eventually will turn into the same thing that you are. Like in that moment, like it will age, it will grow. It's not going to say the same thing. It's not and it's going to become a human. It's going to become an adult. It's going to become something that doesn't rely on other to survive. And I think life, it is so beautiful. When the just like the miracle of birth is just amazing. I think, and that's just back, like that's sidetracked. But kind of going back to the main topic is whether it's her desire to carry to term, I think when you're pregnant, it's not your body. It's not up to you. It's you have the choice to terminate the pregnancy, you do. But whether it's morally correct or whether it's the right thing to do is a different discussion, because she has the full right to do that. But do I agree with it? No. Am I still going to say this is one of my friends? Am I still going to be her friend? Yes. I don't agree with it. However, it's not my place to stop her and be like, you can't do this. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to support her, but I am going to be there for her in the after effects.
Why would it be morally incorrect to end the pregnancy?
Because it's a human life. That's just my I think life begins at conception, and it's like what the other guy was saying. Plan B, it's not necessarily like an abortion pill. It's like another way of
Mhm.
just preventing. It's not.
So if I'm
Um,
following correctly, you believe that human life begins at conception when the sperm meets the egg,
Yes.
and because human life starts at that point, then taking an action to that ends the progression of that life would be unacceptable.
Yes.
And probably what I'm hearing is behind that is you would like the preservation of human life. That's what's
Yes.
upholding that. Okay. And is that the most important value that you have?
I think the preservation of human life is definitely one of like the biggest values I hold, because if I don't think anybody should be killed because they're existing. Whether they've done something like that, whether they've done something wrong or they haven't done anything wrong. Whereas it comes to a fetus, they haven't done anything wrong, and I don't think that they should be subject to just becoming just it's it's something that it's something that's very permanent, and it's a very rash choice. I don't it's really hard to like for me it's really hard to talk about this without getting emotional, but I'm doing my best. Anyways, so when it comes to the preservation of human life for me, not just it's not just people who are innocent, it's not just people who haven't done anything wrong, but it's just people overall.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think I understand that. It doesn't matter what they've done with in their life. It's just that our life. Okay. Why is this preservation of human life important?
Because it's life is something that isn't just like this simple it's you can just like it's there, but it's not it's like every single thing that like we see that has quote unquote life was made by in my case what I believe it was made by God. I think God created everything, and every single thing that like is that he's made is constructed exactly to how he wants it to be, like the bark on a tree, or like how a human is made, like from conception to birth, like all that like God designed, and he designed that for a purpose that like I don't understand. And um it's just something that I think is just it's beautiful. It's
I'm gonna test the limits a little bit here.
go ahead.
So you said like the bark on a tree. I would imagine grass, animals,
Yes.
cats, dogs, maybe cows, pigs.
Yeah.
Of all these things that I listed, would ending their life have the same value as the fetus?
Honestly, everything has value, but when it comes to animals like livestock, plants and stuff like that,
Mhm.
there isn't anything that, in my opinion, is higher than the other. All these things have value, and all these things have their purpose. That's a good word to use for this conversation. Is it's their purpose. For
Okay.
livestock, I don't eat meat personally. I don't. I'm I'm vegetarian. So which is a really odd choice of words, but I'm vegetarian. But people who do eat meat, I understand. It's a good source of protein. It's a good whatever. Um,
Okay.
however, I think kind of going back to like purpose is like I wouldn't say these animals' purpose is to be eaten. Yes, they are on the earth, so we can eat them, and they can be consumed and like put nutrients into our body.
Yeah.
Um,
So from a moral perspective, from your moral perspective, it would be okay to consume livestock?
yes.
Why would it be I think you actually already stated why. And let me try to repeat it, make sure I understand. Because the livestock has one of its maybe a purpose it has might be to be consumed by humans. And
Yeah.
that might be why it's okay to consume livestock, and then it wouldn't be. I mean, obviously, has to be deceased to eat it, and
Yeah.
and then it wouldn't be okay to have an abortion because the fetus would become deceased, and that would not be morally acceptable because there was no purpose behind it.
Um, okay.
Or-
So something like that. Um, okay. Could you repeat that for a second? My brain's
Sure.
processing it.
Okay. So it would be morally okay to consume livestock to make it deceased because there's use to it. There's utility. You can eat it. You can consume it. That's the
Yeah.
purpose. And it would not be okay to have an abortion of a fetus because there wouldn't be a purpose behind it. You wouldn't do anything with it.
Basically, yeah. It's taking something that has value and putting it into the trash, basically. Because a human life has value. And an animal life has value. But for an animal life, its value, one of its values can be supplying food to people who are hungry. Whereas killing a fetus is it's basically it goes into a biohazard bin and it's kind of forgotten about. It's taking something that has value and then destroying it and putting it into something that's it's giving something that has value no value.
If someone were to kill a livestock, a pig, let's say, and they did not consume it, they had never had any intent to consume it, would, in your view, would that be morally okay?
No, not really, because I don't think you should kill without best wow. I don't think you should kill a livestock without reason. Granted, but there are cases where people have to kill livestock, otherwise it'll infect the rest of the herd or
Hmm.
the group.
Okay.
So if
Other
we're taking that into consideration, then that is if it's wow, that just kind of destroys what I was saying. Crap. Um so it's preserving something else that's already it's taking something else. It's killing okay, say a pig that's unhealthy and killing it because it has no because it might infect the other crop. But if it's healthy, I don't think you should kill it. I don't think it has a reason to be slaughtered. But if it has a reason to be slaughtered, like if it has a disease and it could spread to the other livestock, costing the livelihood of like the other stock and making it so those animals can't be eaten, quote,
Mhm.
um, then that's when I think you should. But that's coming from somebody who grew up on a farm.
Okay. So it's like you can kill one for the greater good of the rest of the animals. That's kind of what you're saying.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Can we circle back to if a pregnancy is putting the mother's life at risk? Is this kind of the same scenario? Like if it's for the greater good of preserving the mother's life? Would
I that is for me where again like I said before that's where it gets iffy for me. I think that like if it is like absolutely necessary, I think it could be. I think it could happen. I think I wouldn't be against it happening, but that's one of the reasons why sometimes miscarriages happen, but that's a different topic, is because
Mhm.
those mother's body can't continue to support this life. However, that is one of the reasons why miscarriages happen is because the mother's body cannot continue to support or hold this human life, so the fetus ends up dying. But I think that there's always a chance where doctors can be wrong and that the pregnancy could end up healthy. Like there have been multiple times where doctors have said like if there's no way that you're gonna live through this pregnancy, that the baby's gonna live through this pregnancy. But sometimes they've been wrong. I think there's always a chance that like it could happen that like that it's not going to end up in either one dying, but no one can be 100% sure. I think there's always the chance of what people think could happen not happening, but it's but it's iffy. That's when things aren't. There's nothing that's completely like 100%. This is what's gonna happen.
Gotcha.
There's a high chance that it could happen, but there's a chance that it might not happen.
If it was like 100%, like the mother cannot survive this, would
I
that
think
change things for you? Yeah, what would you? Go ahead.
I think it's really hard for me to say this because I don't agree with abortion. I don't think that it's ever necessary, but I think if it's 100% like this isn't going to this isn't going to this is going to end up killing the mother, I think I hesitantly say, okay, sure.
All right, I think that's all the questions I have for you. I suppose I'll just ask for a little bit of feedback. How did you think the conversation went?
Honestly, there were a few times where I like really had to be like, oh wait, is this like what this is like? This is what I'm saying. Is this like what I mean? It wasn't like anything with you. It was just me. You did that was
Okay.
just like all the questions like you've asked me and asked everybody else. It's been great. Um, they're good questions. They're questions that are very that are very they're very solid questions, and they're like they do make a lot of sense, and I like it when there are questions that I have struggle like when I have difficulty like answering because it's amazing. Because it actually makes me think, and it actually makes me rethink my ideas and my values. So I just want to say you're doing a great job, and I really enjoyed talking with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. And if you have any questions for me before you go back to the audience, now would be the time to ask them.
Nope, just nothing else.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. We'll bring up the last person of the night.
Bye.
Bye. That is Tail. I know Tail. Cool guy. On up. Hey, Tail. What's up?
Hey, Pierce, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. You sound a little sick. Are you sick?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, okay, your voice
Just
sounds better
haven't
now.
been talking I've been listening, yeah. So, what do I think about abortion? It's a multi-layered topic, which of course covers things like women's rights and autonomy, health and safety, socioeconomic benefits, the planning of families, crime like rape or incest, and medical concerns. I think if I was to put any of those things into a hierarchy, I would put women's rights and autonomy at the top, because your rights are my responsibility. The moment we start deciding what a woman can or cannot do with their body, we've gone into a territory that is potentially dangerous, because there may come a time where something in your body, Pierce, becomes valuable. And once we blow past that precedence, once we tell women what they can and cannot do with their body, it opens the doors to others telling other people what they can or cannot do with their body. So that to me is probably at the top of the hierarchy. And the reason why is because even though I personally would never have an abortion on a healthy baby, abortion is a medical procedure. And to say that it's not a valid medical procedure puts it into a category that prevents us from potentially saving a mother's life. Like, I always thought, I have 2 kids, by the way, and I absolutely loved raising them. And if something were to happen where I had to make a choice between my baby or my wife, I would have always made a choice for my wife. Because those kind of situations, those are incredibly tough existential decisions that you need to make. Life isn't easy. Life is hard. Things don't always go the way you want it to go. So sometimes you have to make these tough decisions. There's never a case where you can just say abortion must be completely abolished, because to make a claim like that throws off, you're taking options off the table that don't make any sense, right? Like, it'd be kind of like if I said, like, if you had cancer, or let's not say you, let's say someone had cancer, and, you know, it's medical decisions are complex and varied. And thus, women need to be able to talk to women and important partners or people that are important in the decision, need to be able to talk to those medical professionals to decide what to do. And taking away that right is potentially dangerous.
When you said women's right and autonomy, is there a distinction between those two?
Well, a distinction between women's rights and autonomy?
Yeah, like, are women's rights kind of the right to autonomy?
Well, yeah, but it's not just it is autonomy. It is like making decisions about their own body, making decisions about their reproductive health.
Oh, okay. So it's more than, gotcha. It sounds like in relation to specifically abortion and just narrowly focused on abortion, it sounds like they're pretty similar or the same, but women's rights can be expand beyond abortion
Oh,
and
yeah.
into, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Right.
cool.
Yeah, because again, like I'm glad you brought that up, because imagine a scenario where having the abortion would make them infertile. You know, yeah, maybe that's not a good example. But like, basically, yeah, like it's like, this is where the doctor and the patient need to come together and decide what their options are and what's important to them going forward. It's not a black and white thing.
What is with regards to autonomy, why is that important?
Well, it's important. Going back to what I said previously, your rights are my responsibility. So it's my responsibility to fight for your right to be able to make decisions about your body. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think what I'm trying to ask, and maybe my question wasn't quite pointed enough. What I'm trying to get after is why should we value autonomy?
Well, because for the same reason that we value each other's boundaries. If I can blow past your boundaries, then that means you can blow past mine. And so now we just have chaos, right? So if your autonomy isn't important because you're a woman, then my autonomy isn't important just because I'm a man.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. And would you agree with this statement? Autonomy is more important than the life of a fetus?
Well, no.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that autonomy is more important than life of the fetus. I would say that the woman's ability to make that decision is more important.
Okay.
Now, you see what I mean, right? Like because
I'm not seeing-
the way that you compared those for me in my mind don't really fit, right? Like the life of a fetus doesn't really match up with the autonomy of someone in the sense that, because if you're saying like autonomy is being able to make your own decisions, right? So the woman be able to make the decisions. And if that fetus, of course, is within that woman, then it's up to the decision of the woman. It's up to the woman to make that decision. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the life of the fetus is in danger. Does that make sense? Unless you're trying to state that in one particular hypothetical, a baby's going to die if a woman gets to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I think so. I was expecting you to continue on. So maybe I misunderstood.
Well, if the woman, just because a woman gets to choose doesn't mean a baby's going to die. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I think so, because they can choose not to. They can choose. Maybe they're not pregnant.
Right.
There's other things that can happen.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And this comes back to me pointing out the complexity of the situation. You know, we don't know all the factors that are involved. It
Right.
could be an incredibly difficult medical situation. And the moment, and part of the reason, see, I feel like tonight we kind of danced around the different aspects that make this topic so complicated, like the legal aspects. People want to legalize, either make it so that people can do it as much as they want, abort babies, or make it so that people can't abort babies at all. And the real problem that I see isn't about whether you can or you can't. It's whether or not the person whose life it affects is making that choice. Like they have to make that decision. They have to make that choice. They have to make that decision, and they have to live with that decision. It's one thing to advocate for a baby, and I understand why you would want to do that. But again, I think that the moment we overstep that boundary of taking away that right from the woman to choose, that woman to decide, we've done a terrible disservice to our humanity.
We talked a lot about values tonight. With regards to someone who is pro-life, who's against abortion, I think the value that came up quite often was, what was it? Like, value of preserving human life. I'm wondering where that fits in with you. I'm sure you want to preserve human life. Where does that puzzle piece fit in for you?
Right. Yeah, I do want to preserve life.
Mm-hmm. Is that a puzzle piece that is in your abortion picture?
Well, I mean, not really, because again, it's up to the person, it's up to the woman, right? So I'm not going to be, I want to preserve life, but I'm not going to preserve that baby's life for that woman, because it's up to the woman to decide, right? Like I don't eat Cheetos anymore, but I used to really like them. And if you, Pierce, bought some Cheetos and you ate half the bag, and then decided I don't really want these. I'm gonna throw them away. Do I have a right to tell you no? You can't do that. You have to eat them all, Pierce. And you're like, oh, I'm getting sick, but no, you have to eat them all because I am the preserver of Cheetos. You must enjoy every Cheeto in that bag. It's not my place to tell you to eat those Cheetos. They're your Cheetos. Now, yes, I'm probably going to judge you for throwing them away. Good Cheetos. But, you know, I'm just going to have to deal with that because they're your Cheetos. So my value in preserving Cheetos has limits, especially when it's not my Cheetos.
If we substituted out Cheetos for something that was extremely valuable, would that ever change your stance? Would your stance ever change?
Well, no, not necessarily, but this is where things like what you're doing tonight, creating a place where we can talk about these ideas, because I do believe that, you know, people who are making these decisions, they do deserve support and counsel, you know, so that they can make the best decisions that they can. So being able to, you know, the conversation is what we need to have, you know, because I think it's about making better, high quality decisions. It's not about telling people what they can and cannot do. It's about giving them all the information that they have so that they can make the best decisions that they want. Because I absolutely love my children, and you know, I would not have aborted them for some, you know, bad reason. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that's a good option. But again, I think it's a very risky thing to tell people what they can and cannot do with their own body. It sets an incredibly bad precedence.
And I'm gonna throw out a hypothetical. Some people don't like these hypotheticals. Hopefully you do. If there was a hypothetical world where this would be the only law, let's say, would be restricting abortion after whatever weeks, I don't know. And it would never go any further than that. Nobody else's rights would ever get restricted. It would just be that, and it would never progress. No other rights would ever be infringed. Would that change how you view abortion and what should or shouldn't be restricted?
Are you saying would I agree with the law?
Well, what I picked up on, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, maybe I totally misunderstood, but it sounded like what you were saying is if we put any kind of restriction on abortion, it will set a bad precedent and it can turn into more restrictions down the road. That's what I was hearing. Maybe I misunderstood. So I was asking if that wasn't a possibility, would that change how you feel about it?
Oh, you mean like if there was like no. I mean no, that yeah, I just don't like that hypothetical because again, you're still restricting. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're still restricting the right of the person to choose. Right. You know, if you find out in the 8th month that you're going to have to make a decision between the baby and the mother because of some medical issue, there's a point where I think the purpose of a law is to help make society better, right? It's not to put people into situations where they have to choose between, you know, going to jail or dying.
if there were all these exceptions to your satisfaction, where um, the pregnant person's life was not going to be jeopardized, I think that might be one of the exceptions. Maybe there's other ones. How would you feel about a law at some point you can choose anywhere along the timeline? Because it's restricting, I assume you probably wouldn't be in favor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I completely understand what
It
you
might have been
mean.
sloppy. I'm getting tired. So if there was, maybe I'll change the question entirely because it was so darn sloppy. If there was no risk to the like crazy, our world was different, and it was really easy just to pop children out, and nobody ever died in pregnancy or childbirth, and it didn't even hurt them. It was just like boom, they're out of here. It's good to go. Um, would that it would still be more about the choice, I would assume, and that wouldn't really have a factor.
So you're saying if there were no medical issues to consider, or if
Yeah.
there weren't any like, well, I mean, so it sounds like you're trying to develop a scenario where, let's say, a woman wants to have an abortion for the sake of convenience.
Sure.
Would I agree with that? I mean, no, I personally wouldn't agree with that. But again, it's her Cheetos.
In this scenario, I just want to be clear. Once the Cheetos are born, does that probably changes things, right?
I mean, not necessarily. It's just now it's a new challenge to deal with, right? It's a new opportunity. Does that make sense? Like once the child is born, there are other things to consider.
I mean, there's other options like not putting it
there's
in a
other
trash
options to
can.
consider.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's as far as my brain will allow me to go tonight.
Okay.
But do you have any questions for me before we're done?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Perfect.
Thanks, Pierce.
Thanks for coming up, Tail. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Same.
I am gonna get an invite here for you guys. Hopefully I can paste it in here. I don't even know if I can. Oh, no, I can't. I'm gonna create an invite quick because I did not do that because I'm not prepared apparently. And I also couldn't prepare it while David was speaking because he is not on the show right now. Otherwise, I would have. All right, let's get the invite link. This is to the after show. All you guys are welcome to join. I probably won't be there too long because my brain is honestly kind of cooked at this point. Got up kind of early today. A little bit tired. But it didn't work. Hey, Mango. Help me out. What am I doing? Mango's going to post that tiny URL link that I just sent her because I think I got banned from sending messages, which is kind of funny. There. Nope, she got warned too. I can't get you the link, but I think it's in my profile. I'm gonna double check that. I'm gonna make sure that link. I think it should work. Yeah, so there's a link. If you click on my profile picture, then it will say after show, and you can follow that to the after show. Otherwise, on YouTube, it's in the chat. So I guess without further ado, we'll get on over to that. So if anybody has any feedback, questions, concerns, whatever you might have, you can ask me over there. So See you guys later.